Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us for episode 3 of Finding Your True North. Where leading a life of authenticity is not only our mission, but also our guide. I'm Gray Montana.
And I'm Carrie Hayes, and we are the founders of the True North Academy, where you can find us at thetruenorthacademy.com.
So our chat today, as introduced last time, is on the subject of productivity, what it is. First, we start with Webster, which seems to be the popular vote. The state or quality of producing something, especially crops, and the effectiveness of productive effort, especially in industry. So it seems like there's a gravitation there to what's done or can be made when it comes to productivity. How does it stack up with you? What do you think of when you think of productivity?
Oh, I think about how well I did on my to-do list. That's pretty much where I go with productivity. You know, how tired I feel at the end of the day, how many boxes got checked off. Yeah, if I'm being honest with myself, that's what it feels like.
Like it's a grade, like you have a procedure in mind and have an idea of how best it would be exercised, and then there's that need to check in with it to see how you're doing. Maybe I personally, I think there's more to it. I think we can dive into that, explore a little bit more about what it is on a macro scale instead of what is maybe most rehearsed. How about where it comes from?
Oh, that's it. That's a hot topic. I think, especially in what I just shared and how I think of productivity on a regular basis, I think it gets dangerously close to being very tied to our values, our self-worth. We have to produce X amount. We have to be so tired at the end of the day. We have to, be able to check off all our boxes, have our list right out there on the counter for others to see, look how productive we were today, or on our desk, or on our Slack channel, or, whatever, our Evernote communications, whatever in-house corporate contact we have. And I do find, for myself and for many others that, I've worked through with this topic, it's very common for it to be tied to self-worth and values.
Yeah, there does seem to be a pride of process there. It's like, just to hone in on what process works for you, and to constantly have a self-evaluation based on its success or our ability to carry out such a process. I think for me, there has always seemed to be a bit of a split contribution here. There's an internal pursuit of productivity, there's an external pursuit of productivity. And what I mean by that is, most people would relate to the external, which is to say, have a fixed goal or destination, right? This is, in my mind, what it means to be productive is if I can go from A to B, the least amount of time, or with the greatest success, highest number as it might be in production. So you're fixated on a goal or a destination. That is a superficial pursuit. It integrates with your day-to-day, and coincidentally with most people's pursuit. It's, we have now a joint mission. We have a way to reach the finish line, and we're going to do it as fast as we can. And I don't think there's a whole lot of satisfaction in that model, or you feel that productive until you get there, until you arrive. It's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep our head down until we get there. Then there's an internal part that seems to be removed for many, but I do believe is the source of productivity, and that is stemming from interest. There was a reason why we made the goal. There was a reason why the process was unveiled to
Mm.
us, the rite of passage, if you will.
Right.
There was a motivation to create. That's something that may not be renewed as often as we would like. That's something that when we're fixating on a goal or a finish line and comparing everything that we do moment to moment, day to day against that finish line doesn't necessarily have us revisiting why we're doing it in the first place,
Yeah.
right? So productivity may not just be a measure of superficial or external success. It might be a measure of how well we're oriented to, let's say, our awareness of right now. Um, how is what we're doing working? Our interest that led to creativity, as we discussed last episode.
Right.
Formulating this motivation, why it's important to us. Is that then forgotten? Is that then overlooked or not reevaluated enough to see what's really going on from what this moment, let's say, has to offer? So you have an interest, you have a desire to be productive, you take action, it's in a certain direction. Are there other checkpoints besides getting to where ultimately you want to go?
Well, backtrack 1 second, because you haven't shared with us yet what your desire is towards productivity. Just
My desire to, I see, here's the thing. I don't think, I know that I don't have a desire to be productive.
oh,
I have a desire to live in a productive way. And that's, we're going to get into that, I think, a little more as to what that difference is, which is to say, I believe that productivity comes from an awareness of what's really going on. So you exert yourself on your environment, in some way, shape, or form, your job, your relationship, your mission at hand, whatever it is, your
right.
interest as you clarify it. You have that awareness. But the second part of it comes in where you have a balance as a result of that awareness. So take somebody that's extremely productive, what people would call as productive,
Right.
in one way,
Yeah.
right? They just seem to have a relationship that always steals the show. That their attention's always on, and it's just blossoming beautifully. But they don't really care about anything else, or they don't seem to care about anything else. They're not putting themselves wholeheartedly into a particular work, hobby, as it might be, exercise, whatever it is, self-care. Take somebody who's particularly good at their work. I mean, they're wildly successful in one way, which is to say they've realized certain production goals related to their product, their service.
Right.
They're a measure of outreach in industry.
But
But
they're a slacker because they don't do anything at home.
it does resonate for many, right? I mean, that does exist, that very commonly. And so, how can you rightly call that person productive in general, on a holistic scale? How can that person feel truly satisfied as a productive human being if one side of their life or one portion of their self, as it may be, their created identity is banging and the other is just craps? How does that measure up? I mean, ultimately, I think your fulfillment to some degree does hinge on an efficiency with your productivity. being able to say that you're satisfying the calling, that that you're putting yourself into what you're doing wholeheartedly. But we would be very uneventful people, and many are, if we're only putting that degree of effort into one channel,
Mm,
right?
that's the key.
Yeah. And so back up a little bit and let's get back into where it comes from. The I think productivity can be looked at as a cause, and it can be looked at as an effect, something that comes out of being productive. So you can have a need to be productive, and therefore that's your fuel, or you can be an observer of productivity as a byproduct of, let's say, a particular way of life. So, do you see productivity as a cause and effect relationship? You see it as just a cause? You see it as just an effect? What do you think?
I think that I like to look at it um, most of the time as a reflection. I mean, there are those days, those weeks that I know are, I'm just packing my schedule. And so I like to, get on my calendar and make time for everything and know, when I'm supposed to be someplace, getting something done. But most of the time I prefer to have the general sense of what I am set to accomplish and then reflect at the end of the day.
So what's motivating? It's what you're saying is it's not necessarily the concern about being productive in your world as much as it is just feeling good if you apply yourself to your environment, what there is to do, and then reminiscing and reflecting about its effects later as a means to for fulfillment.
Yes, that is more motivating to me than making a big long to-do list. And when I do that, sometimes I can find myself resisting the feeling of overwhelm by just shutting that down.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that could speak to more people. It is very tempting to buy into any performance standard, any national or international trends of living, to use it kind of as a rubric or a framework to measure yourself, is to say, well, when I get here, when I am this person, and that is definitely measured in the mind as productivity. Like I am gaining ground. I am traveling from one place to another based on my pursuit, based on how productive I am, based on what I can accomplish in any one direction. And as a cause and effect relationship, I do think they're divergent paths. I think uh, someone who prides themselves on being productive for product's sake, for outcome's sake, is certainly setting themselves up for disappointment.
Yes.
There are too many forks in the road. There are too many uh, what are looked at as roadblocks when you have a certain place to arrive at in a certain amount of time, as your mind would want to try to quantify it and always calibrate it
I
to that.
think this is why we became such a society of multitaskers. We would put too much on our to-do list. So we do a little of this, a little of that, a little of the other. And,
Yeah,
and then that is actually how overwhelm gets created, because at the end of the day, you're really not checking off any of your projects because none of them are done. They're
yeah,
complete various stage of completion, but they're not done. So
yeah.
I think, when we work with clients on this topic, some of the helpful strategies are, first of all, reducing the number of projects on a to-do list And secondly, if a project goes on your to-do list, then you also underneath that break down all the steps to that project, because that's a bit of a reality check. Keep you in line of, yeah, I can't just clean out that closet. I've got to, have bins labeled for each kid. I've got to be able to manage the chaos that's within that closet. I should do it on a day where, the trash is getting picked up the next day because I don't have room to store the trash. Whatever the things might be, it's important to think through every small step, whether it's cleaning out a closet or whether it's, launching a new company or going to the grocery store, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah. So productivity through prioritizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And,
important.
that's a good point. It's focusing your energy in a way that's not going to be easily distracted and therefore minimized, in any one direction. And that really is applicable to any direction at any time.
That's right.
Yeah, and I liked your example of the list taking, because I think there's a plentiful breed out there that would have list taking as an accomplishment in and of itself. Making a list.
Yeah.
Listen, if most people are honest, just making a list makes you feel productive,
Hey, I'm guilty. I am.
right? I mean, and again, as an organizational tool and as a way of prioritizing, it's a wonderful exercise.
Right.
Because if you don't make a list, how can you prioritize? If you don't know what your available options are, how can you prioritize?
Right.
It makes total sense. But to the extent that you make a list and feel productive, or you create a list verbally in the presence of others as to what really should be done, could be done. A lot of husband and wives can appreciate this. Just go on the record with something and you feel like it, to some degree, it's off your back, but it's never said at a time when it could be acted on or clearly isn't convenient to act on. So you've got to realize the primary reason you say it is for that superficial being a measure of the mind, gratification of just saying it. It's like saying it is doing it. Writing it down is doing it. No, it's not doing it. What is the priority now? If there was more of an awareness,
Mm-hmm.
which is to say an internal awareness, a means for balancing what really is most important, where production can really be outletted. So say, look, here I am, I'm at home, we're getting ready for dinner, husband and wife, let's say the husband's got the TV on, the wife's trying to prepare the food. There are plenty of suggestions there that would have him potentially prioritizing being more helpful at that time. But instead of saying, hey, could you give me a hand with dinner? It's, the trash has to be out by tonight, or we really need to fill out that application before the end of the week. What's the point? How is that productive right now? How are you truly aware of what may be bothering you and might not be on his radar, which is ultimately the point, which is to gain perspective and priority. So I think that awareness of really where the outlet for productivity is, as well as an awareness for refining the product or production that you are already embarking on, is critical. It's pay attention. Life is a guide, and you only have so many ways to express yourself. And if you are convinced that your premeditated way, what occurred to you 24 hours ago, a week ago, a month ago, is the best way to follow through with this day, you're missing the point. There is more to the story, which is being unveiled and unfolded with every step that you make. There are feedback. It's like being a captain of a ship, or a leader of an army, or um, what would be to say president in industry, and you have you formulated a plan that's guaranteed to work, that was a great idea and was endorsed by everybody at one time,
Right.
and you enact the plan and never think to consult your team, your army, your group as you go to get real time feedback. I
Right.
think efficiency in productivity comes from a desire to check in.
All right. Well, we set out to take on these big topics, and it always feels like we're just, getting to the tip of the iceberg. But we've talked about its meaning. We've talked about what our desire is or is not when it comes to productivity, and we've also talked about cause and effect. So, in wrapping it up for everybody,
Well, I think there's a few more takeaways, or maybe examples or analogies. So is it enough just to generalize, as I just did, as a way to maybe formulate a new relationship with productivity, better incorporate it into what would be considered a healthy lifestyle? What are the lessons to be learned here?
yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add in that direction?
Well, I think the to-do list, whether or not you write it, I think it's important to be honest with yourself and to break down and make sure that you also take note of all the steps involved with whatever item it is that you're mentally or physically putting on a to-do list. Yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway for healthy lifestyle when it comes to productivity. Um, and well, maybe equally important is to understand that productivity, uh, let me say it the other way around, self-worth is not a result of your productivity. You're, you know, deserving of all that you want in this life, whether or not you are productive on a daily basis. So,
Yeah, and that's to your point, just being honest with yourself. What is the motivation for this?
yeah,
Does it stand a chance of contributing to your environment at large? Your group, your family, your relationship, or is it some escapade that you believe that you'll feel different once you get somewhere else? Um, that's yeah, and certainly when you're making a list, I think it's a healthy practice to evaluate that one item at a time, as it may be.
yeah,
Applying to life on a bigger scale, there really is a need in society at large to really focus on a destination at all costs. I think there is this a need for validation. So as soon as you go in a direction that has your self-worth, as you say, hinging on a certain resultant, you're not going to be worth anything until you get there.
yeah,
What is your connection to right now is suspended. It has to be suspended until there's more feedback as you would want to see it, through that filter that you have that ultimately will measure your self-worth. Here's an analogy. This is one that came to mind when I was thinking about productivity. And it's kind of out there, but then that's who I am.
hit
That's
us
how I
with it.
live. I like to dive deep. So imagine you are a sole captain on a ship that has gotten lost at sea.
Okay.
And what's made it lost is the fact that you no longer have any instruments to locate your position.
Mm.
You don't have the tools to navigate your course. Maybe your GPS failed, maybe your old school, instrument measure your longitude, and latitude based on the horizon has gotten washed overboard. Whatever it is, you really know in general the direction you're going based on the sun, which of course only applies to half the day. But there's no way you can expect that you're going to hit that port that you aim for. At that point, and you're alone on this boat, and there's no guarantee you're going to get anywhere, can you be productive? What is the extent of your productivity? It puts you in, when you embody that, you just feel that, it puts you in a position to realize that you set sail in the first place for one reason, and that's to get where you're going. But at this point, there's very little chance that you're going to get where you thought you were going to go. So does that mean that you throw in the towel, abandon the journey, abandon the life, give up, let the ship go where it is? Or does that mean that you use everything in your power to navigate the boat with what God gives you, what your environment is showing you? You have still the ability to steer the boat. You have still the ability to see the sky, chart your progress based on the sun, on the moon. Becoming more intimately involved with your environment. You don't know if you're going to go where you thought you were going to go, but you are still alive. You are still able to contribute to the situation at hand to the best of your ability. This comparison isn't directly compatible with our everyday life because we're not in a survival situation. But what it does do is it forces you to realize that there is always a way for you to apply your most innate self to the situation if you are aware of what is around you, what is really going on in your environment, and what makes it up.
And that scenario makes me feel compelled to focus no longer on the destination with such intentness, but on the journey itself, which is frankly a slogan or a thought we hear people say all the time. But you just gave us a beautiful illustration of how to embody that feeling or that desire to engage more with the journey than the destination.
Yeah. Listen, I know many have not really given it the chance to try, but it is a very fulfilling way to live, because everything's heightened. It has to be. You think about how intense your sensations have to be when it's a situation where you don't know where you're going, and you want to use every little morsel of information, detail from your environment to figure out where it is. That degree of observation and perception, as it would evolve to be, is your guide. That ultimately has you at your best. But most people sacrifice that to be somewhere else now. Yeah. Right? So I think that's a good takeaway. Next episode, we will go in the direction of learning. So maybe that's more of a tangible exploration, but nevertheless, we'll make it trippy because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And listen, all of you, if you want to get the notification of the episode and not have to be hanging out on a YouTube channel, subscribe and you'll have it right away.
Terrific. All right, everybody. I just want to remind you that you can find this vlog series on our blog tab on our website at thetruenorthacademy.com. And in that website, you'll also find our classes and clinics and workshops, things that we offer that really facilitate this self-discovery process that we talk about here, and the journey of self-discovery. So.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.